Good evening, everyone. My name is Don C. I'm an alcoholic. And I'm just really honored to be here. Every once in a while, I think you attend a gathering of alcoholics. It has a very unique something that you walk away and you'll always remember it. Just being here is a spiritual experience. Just walking the hallways and meeting everyone. And I like that idea of having a different host every day. I ate in every restaurant in that little town up there, and it was great meeting a lot of people. And so I had, even though I've been living in Colorado for I guess 40 years, I never was up here. And I was sitting out there the other day, and I was thinking, how could you sit here and ever tell yourself there is no God? How could you do that? Because you can feel it. It's in all the flowers and all the beauty here. It's a pretty awesome place, here. And so it was good. The first thing I want to do is, my grandpa always told me, he said, when you travel, always be aware of whose land you're on. And so I always like to do that. The original landowners of this area were the Utes, the Ute Indians. This particular place used to be their summer campgrounds. This is where they came. So I just like to acknowledge their ancestors, that I understand I'm on your land. And I will try to let my words be appropriate, because I know that that's all connected. I guess is the way I see that. So I like to honor the ones who own this place. And second is, the other thing my grandpa taught me is, he said, whenever people gather together for a thing that's important, then the first thing you should do is take the time to connect with each other. And I think that this kind of a gathering is something important, because this place saved my life. To me, drinking is about whether I live or die. And so I was close to death, and I came to this group, and you showed me how to live. And so I thought I would take a little time to do what our elders taught us, to connect with each other. And I think that's important, because the steps, for example, they say we. It doesn't say I. It talks about what I'm going to do here. It talks about we. And how I was taught to do that is when we say connect, this is what we mean. If I were to speak in my own language, it's easier to say what I'm going to say, because sometimes there's a difference between English and other languages. And when we say connect, the place we want to get is, this is how it happens. The first level of connectedness is done with one of the 5 physical senses. So when our eyes meet, our eyes connect, ear, touch, good job. That's the first level. Have you ever noticed, like, when you look at someone, your eye connects, a second later there's a feeling goes across. In our language, we call that feeling netashniha. And the elders say, never start until it's there. Even like when you argue or fight, if you ever notice, that feeling is not there. It's gone. And so you say things you don't mean. It goes back and forth, because what transfers is this feeling, netashniha. And it's something that I think that's why this place feels so good. You connect, all of a sudden you're connected to flowers and the mountains and the air, and you go, whoa, this really feels right. That's netashniha. So in our language, that was always what they say, connect before you start anything. And how we did that was, we did so with a plant, because we believe that when we look at these plants, we actually refer to them as our relatives. So we call it the plant nation, because our relatives has this medicine. There's all kinds of things these plants do. This particular plant, what it does is it helps with this connectedness. So usually when you start, they say take this plant and then it helps that connectedness to go. How you connect is when you use the medicines, you got to know how to get the medicine out of the plant. Some you soak it in water, and then the water turns brown, then you drink the tea. That's certain kinds. Some you grind it up. You're going to make a powder. This particular plant comes out, the medicine comes out in the smoke. You light it, when the smoke comes out, that's the medicine that they call netashniha, that helps you to connect. I will burn this medicine very often when I write inventory, because I want that connect to honesty, to the Creator, for help. So when I get stuck, I'll light this medicine. So I use it in that manner. And how we do that is in a large group, we spread it with an eagle feather. This is a fan, they call it. And so what we do is we light that medicine, and then it comes out in the smoke, and then we run the fan right over the smoke, and then that medicine is trapped on the fan, and you go. So you throw it, it goes a long distance. Some of you will smell it way in the back right away. That's how this is done. So I'm going to light a very tiny bit, because it doesn't take much. I'm going to light a very tiny bit, because you got to be respectful of the traditions and technology. Right? That's important to respect one another's territories. So I'm going to light just a very small amount, and for those who can see, it will smoke like this. And then you run this fan, and you catch the medicine, and you throw it. And then sometimes you see a person needs some. Just kidding. Just kidding. We were having fun today, as you can see. Then, in some cultures, when you want to know the truth, some will get a Bible and they'll put their hands on it, and then you swear you tell the truth before, and there's a little saying goes with that. In our culture, what they will do is they'll stick an eagle feather in your hand. And when you hold a feather, you can't lie. You got to tell the truth. That's how it is. And so I thought maybe I'll just lay this fan up here while I talk. just in case, you know, I need a nudge or whatever. Then I also acknowledge I have some of my sisters drove over here today, and I'm glad to see you here, and we're going to have breakfast tomorrow with them, so I'm really honored you would be here tonight. And whoever selected those speakers that you had here, they were awesome. They were just out of the park, all of them. Yeah. And I want to also acknowledge, I came here with a problem. Something went wrong in my family, and I have 9 children. All my children are sober now. It was not like that at one time. And out of that, I have 20 grandchildren. It's a tribal thing. I guess, cold winters or something, you know. But anyway, with the exception of one, all my grandchildren are sober. In our family, over a period of years, talking circles, ceremonies, sweat lodges, being honest, crying, all of those things, we started to heal. And so my grandchildren, they don't know about alcoholism. That's not in they haven't experienced it or the results of that. Our family was able to heal that. And just before I come up here last week, I attended my oldest son, is 51, and I attended his birthday. And we were sitting there talking, and you know what he was talking to me about? He was kind of reminiscing about his life and growing up. He's got his own family now. But what he was reminiscing about was his days in Alateen. And he was telling me about, I thought, it was just very moving for me to have him talk that way. But when I see how you treat the Alateens here, you talk about them in that young Alateen that spoke up here, that was mind-blowing to me to see a young guy growing up here and be able to stand up and to talk like how he did here. Somebody's got to be pretty proud of that young guy. Probably you here who have worked with those kids. And I didn't know what to do with their gauntlet last night, though. I'm not attuned with all the moves and all that stuff, but it was fun. They were having a lot of fun. And I had the opportunity, I think it was 3 years ago, it was the most fearful talk I ever have done. And it was in San Francisco, and it was to 5,000 Ikipa kids. 5,000 of those kids, were there, and they scared the bejesus out of me. And, I was smudging myself, But what I learned was they were having fun. They were sober. They weren't sad. They were just really very joyful, very loveful people. And I thought, I'm not going to worry about this recovery movement. Those young ones are the next ones who will be sitting here, and it's probably going to be in good shape, maybe even better, than it is now. And so, thank you for honoring those Alateens like you do. That's important, very, very significant, and I don't know if I've seen that before anywhere where I've traveled. So, thank you for those of you who are doing that. It seems like anything that I have of value that I know, it seems I got it from you. So I don't expect I'll tell you anything new. I expect I'll probably tell you what you taught me. It's probably what's going to go. I remember I went up and I was talking to a group of kids in Alaska, and they had brought them in from the villages. It was kind of a leadership training thing and talking about sobriety and stuff in the communities. And at the end of the day, they have two clans up there. One's the Eagle clan, and they have the Ravens. And then they have sub-clans. But at the end of the day, one of the young ones stood up. He says, all the Eagles stand up. And so a bunch of them stood up, and he said back about the day's training, and he summarized it. And he sat down, and then all the Ravens, stand up, so that when he summarized what they heard during that day. And I had never seen anything like that before. I thought, that's pretty cool. So that night I was having dinner with the sponsor, and I said, why did those kids do that? Or what is behind that? And he said, it's something that happened a long time ago. He said, they wanted you to know that your words didn't fall to the ground. So they was listening, is what they were saying. They wanted you to know that. And so that's what I will try to do here tonight, is to not let what you taught me, not let these words fall to the ground. Now, what you told me was all I had to do was to say what happened and what it was like and what it's like now. And I could probably do that because I know, I'm probably the one who knows the most about that. Other than the blackouts, there's other people who know about those, but So I'll tell you what happened. And how I'm going to do that is I'm going to tell you a story. So one of the other things in our culture is, I don't know how it started, but sometimes if you're a singer and you're playing a song on a drum, then you go to maybe another tribe or another community and they'll teach you a song. So then when you sing that song away from there, you have to say, this song was given to me by, then you say who gave it to you. So you don't take the credit, if they applaud or whatever. That's how you do it. So this story that I'm going to tell you is not mine. It was given to me, and I had permission to do so by a man named Don P. out of Denver. Some of you might know of Don Pritz. He's made his journey now, but one night I was coming into AA and I couldn't stay sober. I was slipping and I was dying. I couldn't catch on what was going on, and this man said to me, he said, let's go up to Estes Park. He said, there's an Indian talking up there. And so that's a little town outside of Denver. So we went up there, and I walked in that room, and there this man sits up at the table getting ready to speak. He had the bluest eyes I ever seen. Just blue eyes. And he looked at that book. I looked at his book, and it was like run over by a truck, and it was dirty and rubber banded and falling apart, and you could almost smell it, coffee and all that stuff. And I'd never seen a big book like that. You could tell he must have done some work with that book. And I walked in there, and he looked at me, and our eyes connected and went shoo, and we stayed that way for years. It never disconnected me and that man. We were like relatives. And so this is the story that he told that night. And when he told that story, that was my story. This is, I didn't know how to get up and to share, but when he shared this story, I cried. I said, I know exactly what that story means. And in this story, there's this boxing match. And in one corner, there's black trunks of alcohol. Opposite corners, white trunks. That's me in there. And people are coming in to the arena, grabbing their seats. And in the very front row, there's a special ribbon that's across that row. It says, reserved for the family. So they save the front row so the family can come and watch the fight. They get the best view of what's going on. So as the people come in there, my family come walking in, and they remove the ribbon. They all sit down in the front row and waving, doing that stuff. And so the referee come out, and he said, okay, there's some rules, no hitting below the belt, and when I say break, break, and we were agreeing. And while that referee was talking, I looked at the alcohol in the eye, and that feeling was there. I connected to it. Something was magic, and then he would smile at me, and I felt very close to this alcohol. So we went and we sat down, and a bell rang, and we got out there and started bouncing around. And first couple of rounds went too bad. We're ducking around and punching away and whatever. But somewhere during the third round, I got out there, and I must have just ducked at the wrong time, and the alcohol just stung a good one. And I felt it. And I was kind of surprised. And he looked at me, and he said, that was just a lucky punch. You can whip me. And I knew the alcohol was telling me the truth. We connected like that. So as the rounds went on, fourth round, fifth round, this alcohol, it was hitting below the belt. And my eye was getting swelled shut, and it was hurting. And he just kept saying, it's a lucky punch, you can whip me. And every time he said it, that feeling inside was so strong, I just knew that I could. And so by the time round 7 come, I'm sitting in the corner, my eyes is all bloodied up, and I can't see very well. And I look over at him, and he even lip syncs, you can whip me. Sitting over in the corner. And I started to think, I said, I need to have a strategy here. This isn't going well. And so I started getting a little plan together, and as I'm doing that, I felt this tug on my arm, like this. And I looked down there, and there's my son. And I said, "What?" And he said, "Dad," he said, "Mom says to tell you, let's all go home. Just climb down from the ropes. Come with us, let's just all go home." He said, "And we'll help you patch up and stuff." And I looked at him and I said, "I want you to do something." I said, "I want you to go back and you tell your brothers and sisters to watch." I said, "I got some Indian moves that alcohol don't know." I said, "You tell them, just watch what's going to happen this round." I said, you're going to be surprised what your dad knows. So I got out there for round 8, and the alcohol started kicking and putting me down, and I was on my hands and knees swinging at the alcohol, and it would just stomp, and the referee wasn't saying nothing, breaking all the rules and stomping on my head. And I remember the bell rung. I was so happy. I crawled back to the little chair that they had for you, and I sit there, and boy, I was just I was trying to get to some kind of a plan, because it wasn't going very, very good. And so as I'm sitting there trying to think up a plan, the alcohol's got that smile, and our eyes are connected, and I'm still attracted to that damn thing. And you can whip me. And boy, and I just light a fire inside like that. So as I'm planning, I felt this tug. And I looked down there, and this time it's my little daughter, Morningstar. And I said, "What?" And she says, "Dad," she said, "Mom says to tell you we're going to leave. We want you to come with us. Please," she just said. Looks at me with that little baby Indian face, "Please, Dad, let's all go home." And I looked down at her and I said, "I got one move that another tribe taught me. I want you guys to watch." I said, "I'm going to go out there and I'm going to win." And so I went out there when the bell rung, and I don't remember when they left. I was focusing on that alcohol, but they left. They left, and this time alcohol had me right on my stomach. I couldn't even hardly crawl, just kicking the boots, putting the boots to me and everything. And when I was looking at the alcohol's tennis shoes, I had a moment of clarity. And so I left that arena. I crawled out of there, and I couldn't believe what happened. So I went and I got me some food, and I know I needed help, so I went down to Barnes and Nobles and I got me a self-help book, and I got me some candles and some Nakai flute music, and I said, "Okay, this will help get my shit together." So, and I started exercising, and it's probably about a month or so, I don't remember. All of a sudden I got thinking about one more move that I could make. And I said, "I wonder if that alcohol is still there." I said, "I'm going to go back there and see." And I went back into the arena, and there the alcohol is standing in that corner with his hands on the rope. "Alcohol, I'm back." "I knew you would be." I said, "Yes, sir." I said, "I'm back." And this time, as I was crawling through the ropes, it didn't even wait. It put me down right there, immediately right on my stomach, and had the boots put to me, and once more again, the alcohol was lying. So it happened so fast. There wasn't no 10 rounds. It was like immediately. So I crawled out of there, and I got thinking, I went to the wrong bookstore. That's what I said. That's what it was. So I went to a different bookstore, and I got different self-help books, and I got different music, and so I got thinking, I wonder if the alcohol is there. I got in shape again, and I went back to the arena, and when I opened up the door, it wasn't even in the ring. As soon as I opened up the outside door, it just put me down right there. I was down. And I guess it was that where I understood one line in the big book. It said that you must fully concede to your innermost self that you have this disease of alcoholism. That was the moment I knew there was a big lie going on, and I was heading back in there. So instead of going to the bookstore, what I knew was I had heard about the AA. I didn't know a lot about you, but I knew it was to do with something to do with stop drinking. And so I was living in Colorado Springs at that time. There's one street called Tejon Street. And I went down there in the afternoon. I spotted where the meeting was. It was upstairs. And I didn't tell nobody I was going to go there. I just wanted to scope it out. And so that night I went there, a little before 8. And it was that place, the cars all parked at a diagonal like this. And there was one slot right in front of the door. And they were parking on the other side too. And so I stopped right in front of that spot and I said, I'm going to go around the block just one time. And if that slot is still there, that means I'm supposed to go in there. It's be a sign. So I drove around the block, and sure enough, I come there, and that slot was empty, and I stopped there. And I said, to make sure, I'm going to go around that block just one more time. And so I went around that block, and I had my foot on the brake. I started to go as slow as I could around that block, and sure enough, I got there, and it was empty. So I said, okay, it's a sign. I'm supposed to go in there. So I parked. I walked up the steps. And I peeked around the corner to look in there to see what was going on. And my first thought, I looked in there and I went, oh my God, is this all white people in here? I couldn't believe that. And I said, what are they going to teach me? And I was going to leave, and they had a greeter, a big old tall white guy, and he had like a shepherd's hook, you know. He and he slid me right into that chair, and I had a cup of coffee in my hand, and I couldn't get away, you know. I was trapped. That's how I seemed. So I sit there, and my mind was really going, and I said, okay, I'm not telling these white guys nothing. Whatever happens, I'm not saying nothing. So they went around and introduced themselves. My name's so-and-so, I'm alcoholic. And when they come to me, I didn't say nothing. And they waited a long time. Finally, the next guy, he just continued around because he probably knew something. And so I don't remember a lot from that first meeting I sat in there. I was irritated at a couple of things in there. One was they were laughing, and there wasn't nothing funny about anything, and they would talk and just laugh like hell about this little stupid shit, you know. And it just irritated me they did that. And the other thing is they were telling on themselves about their weaknesses. You know, they would talk about something was going on and I was selfish. Where I come from, you didn't tell people shit like that. You never admitted no weaknesses about nothing. You didn't. And so the third thing about that meeting is I didn't understand, probably for the first time in my life, there was a feeling there. It was just a feeling was in that room. And I'd never felt that before. Even with those white guys and all those thoughts I had about them laughing and all that, there was something else going on. I didn't understand. It was that feeling. And so the next day, all I longed for was that feeling. So I went back again, and I said, I didn't talk hardly for a long, long, long time. But I would go and I would listen the best that I could. And so, after a little while, I knew that there was a book that they called it a big book. I knew that, and I got one. And I tried to read it because they said in that book there was instructions. And I looked all over in that dang book and I could not find no instructions. In fact, it was the most boring book I ever read. I had a hard time, focusing on it very long. And the other thing I knew was I needed to get a sponsor. Now, in our culture, that's like get an elder. So I kind of had a feeling what that meant. So I watched and listened. And I seen this one old guy. And he was about 6'6", I think. He was a big, big guy. White hair. He was an attorney for trade. And he must have been in a lot of fights when he was drinking because he's scarred up. A lot of scars on his face and knuckles and things like that. And he must have been hit with an ugly stick when he was a baby. The man was just... God didn't make no human being uglier than that man was. But he had this thing about him. When I'd look at him, that connectedness would go there. There was just something about him. He seemed to have some kind of a practical common sense to God. Just the way that he talked about it. It wasn't no forceful thing. And so anyway, I went and I got enough nerve and I asked him if he'd be my sponsor. And after the meeting, we sit down, and he said, we'll talk about this. And he had this habit or something about him, or maybe it was me, but he would like size me up. He would like to look at me up and down my body like this, and he'd like close his eyes and shake his head. He had like this funny body language about him. And he'd say things like... He'd say, I've been in these rooms, I think it was 18 years then, and he said, I watch you Indians, you come, you all sit way in the back row. He said, right after the meeting, psh, you're out the door. He said, I never heard one of you share nothing. He said, my name is so-and-so, I'm an alcoholic. He said, I never heard one of you share. I saw one of you guys stayed 6 months. He said, you guys are weird, like you don't know what goes on here. He said, you're weird. You don't get it. And he was starting to get me really irritated. The way that he was acting. And I don't know if you've ever been a kid and your dad bought your little puppy and you're playing with that puppy, but you try to make it growl or something. You try to, rub his face to get it to bark. And that's how I felt he was doing with me. Like, you guys sit in the back and you Indians don't get it. You're kind of stupid, and I don't know if I help you or not. Is it like that? That's how I felt. And I remember he did that enough that first meeting. I remember I looked him right in the eye, really strong, and I let that Natashniha go like that. I didn't say it out loud because he was big, but all I thought was to myself, I says, I'll show you, you white son of a bitch. You just show me what these instructions are, I'll do it. And what I found out later on was when he was sizing me up, I think about the only thing he had to work with was my anger. And he probably thought if I could find that zone where he won't split, but I can touch that border, he was just trying to keep me there. That's how I felt. Then he said, I just decided, he got this excited. He said, I just decided right now, he said, for the rest of your life, I'm going to be your friend. He said, I don't care if you like me or not. It's not about you. He said, I just decided I am going to be your friend, no matter what. He was going like that. And he said, what I'm going to, not just friendship, but I'm going to tell you the things I'm not. He said, I like to be really clear. He said, I'm not your hotel. So don't ask me for a place to stay. I ain't your banker. I'll never give you no money. Don't ask for no money. And he had this list of things that he wasn't, but he said, I will be your friend. And he said, the other thing I can do for you is he grabbed his big book and he opened up how many pages he put between his fingers was 164 pages. And he just looked at me like this, and he said, "These are all stories." He said, "Well, I want to tell you about what's in between my hands." And he said, "If you are willing to do these instructions in these 164 pages, I'll guarantee you will never have to drink again." And I almost started to cry. That there was something, somewhere, that somebody knew, because I died. And so there was a thing that happened. I wanted to know what was in those 164 pages. So first thing he did is he opened up the pages to where the 12 steps were. And he said, "I want you to look at each one of these 12 steps. Read the step. And there's 2 questions you got to come back and tell me the answer to. Step 1, you read it. Am I willing to go to any length to work this step? Second question, do you want to? You don't have to. It was his belief. He said, half of AA don't work steps and they stay sober, so you don't have to do this stuff. He said, that half they just go and they borrow stories and they swap and they lie about crap and they never drink and they hang out. He said, they don't work steps. That's how he sized up AA. And so I had to do that with each of those 12 steps to see, did I want to do it? And was I willing to go at any length? And so I went ahead and I did that. Then he gave me a schedule, but then I had moved to Denver. And he gave me this schedule and he said, I'm going to circle 6 meetings that you need to go to. Sunday night, your choice to go or not go or go where you want, but you got to go to these 6. And so he circled, there was a big book study, there was a traditions. There was this one group where there was about 8 old guys there. And you go to that meeting and you could not sit in their chair. Each of them had their chair, and there was a bench and some hard fold-up chairs, but you didn't sit in their chairs. And they said the same thing in every damn meeting. They had no wisdom going there at all. Wake up in the morning, ask God for a day of sobriety, get on your knees at night. I could say the thing right with them, it seemed like. And I had to go to that meeting. Then he said, you go to this meeting, and when it starts, you say your name's Don, you're alcoholic, and he says, shut up. He said, you got nothing of any value to share that's going to help anybody. He said, just shut up until you do a 3rd step. Once you do the 3rd step, now you got a helper. But he said, until then, don't say nothing. And so I did that. I started going to those meetings. Then AA is kind of small, so everybody knows if you're not talking, they say, I know who his sponsor is. Then one of the places I had to go was a place called Eagle Lodge. And so I went there, and one night I come in early and I sit down. And who walks in? This Indian gal walks in. Sits right across the table from me. And our eyes met, and that feeling was there. And I went, whoa, man. And I started thinking, And I said, I'm not going to make any progress. This is potential here. I can recognize potential. I'm not going to make any progress here just saying my name's Donna, I'm an alcoholic. I'm going to have to say a little bit more than that. And so I had my plan going, and when it come my time to speak, I started, my name's Donna, I'm an alcoholic. And on 449, the big book on acceptance, it says this. And boy, I just was whipping that shit out there, and she was just smiling. She knew she had a heavy Indian brother right there across the table from her. And I knew this was good for coffee. And so I gave her my number and handed it to her, and we did go for coffee. And going home, because I'd been sober now for a little bit, but walking to my apartment and having that experience at that AA meeting, I felt like John Travolta. walked to my apartment, I was just like, I was just making the moves best as I knew how, and when I was unlocking the door, the phone rings. I said, she couldn't even wait. That's what happened. She couldn't wait. She wants me. I knew it. So I do my little cool voice, hello. Guess who it was? My sponsor. The sponsors are like the internet. They're just everywhere, and they know everything, and they hear everything, What are you doing moving your lips? I heard you were talking, So, anyway. But he started to show me the instructions and the steps. First 43 pages for the first half of step 1. Then he showed me on page 52, there's a paragraph there, had 9 instructions on in order to look at unmanageability. We were having a problem with personal relationships. We couldn't control our emotional nature. And he had me take those sentences and flip them into a question. And so I had to take a look at my personal relationships, wife, son, co-workers, friends. And I had to look at them and say my wife, how is my behavior with her? Honestly. And what I started to write down was, I get even, I put her down, I get jealous, I make fun of her, and I could just see I went, holy cats, that's not good. Then I look at my children, and I look at people I work with, and I said, God, you don't get along with nobody. I didn't have any name on there that I wasn't doing some kind of game or dance with. And so then I had to take a look at my emotional nature, anger. When I'm in anger, what do? Retaliate, get even. So I had to do that for all 9 of those areas. Then he explained to me the steps are all interconnected. Even though they're in order, they're all connected to each other. So then when I was finished with that, then I had to go to step 2, chapter 2, agnostics. Then I took those 9 areas from step 1, I brought them to step 2. And then I had to make a little mini vision for each of those 9 areas. Personal relationships, your wife, Came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could. And I had to take a look at that possibility of being kind, gentle, honest. And I didn't have to have the perfect list to get an idea of what that was. 9 areas of vision. Then what he explained to me is, in that step, it's connected to step 12. Having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, that's connected right to step 2. He said because the steps are designed to work with the design of how God made our bodies and minds. And to make progress, our minds are interested in 2 pieces of information. One is, where am I? And one is, where am I going? Step 1 is, where am I? And step 2 is, where am I going? And so I didn't understand all of that. I just did it. But it kind of made sense. So then it came to step 3. And he showed me instructions for step 3. And he said in there, every line is an instruction. If there's a question, I had to answer the question. If there was a statement, did I agree with it? If I didn't agree with it, I was wrong, the book was right. And so, now, I had some problems in the beginning with step 3, because for this reason. On our reservation, there's one church there, and then they have missionaries. So, different missionaries would come in, and then they would have their services. Then they always had like watermelon and clothes, and so our parents would drop us off there. We'd have to, get your jacket and eat some food. And the thing about that was you had to hear the pitch first. You could just go in that room and get the clothes and food. You had to hear them first, and then each of them had like a different tradition. So some of them, they come in mission school, and then pretty soon everybody's out in the audience, going like this. So all the kids were going like this, and then pretty soon they'd run out of money, and they closed that down. And then a different church would come in, and they'd say, "Oh, you're lucky. All of those people is going to hell. You're lucky that they're not here. We're the ones that's going to save you." And so then you couldn't be doing this, so you'd have to do the other one that the other one does. And then they started school, and in those days the nuns, they wear habits, black and white habits. And for a little Indian kid, a nun in a habit is terrifying because they got rulers up their sleeves, and they patrol and things like that. And they're all trying to make you find God, and they would say things like, "You ever been burned with a cigarette?" Yes, sister, I have. Well, in hell, your whole body is full of blisters from cigarettes. Don't you want to study the 10 Commandments? You bet I do, sister. See? So then a little time would go on, and they say, not only is your body going to be blistered, but there ain't no water in hell either. No water, body's going to be blistered. You want to seek God? You bet I do, sister. You see, you just got really spiritual. It was like they had the flames of hell licking your ass to seek God. And then I come in here, and very early in the program, you're saying, you need to turn your life and your will over to the care of God. And I said, I don't think so. But whoever it was that added that part in there, God, as you understand Him, thank you for doing that, because that made a big difference to me. There was something about that I could search more. So all I knew about God was what was in my head from I learned from a kid. And so one day I was in Denver at the meeting at York Street, and this guy from California walked in here. He was talking about third step, and he told a story. Some of you probably heard this story, but it was about making this decision to turn your life and your will over to the care of God. Because I used to get confused going to AA meetings when you talk about it, because some days we go to a meeting and they say, well, I got up this morning and I turned my will over, and then I took it back, and then I turned it over and I took it back, and I took it back and I broke it and I bent it in half and I took it over and I started, and I'd say, how the hell are you doing this step if you're turning it over and taking it back all the time? Something didn't seem right about that. And it puzzled me until I heard this guy tell a story, and he said, in this area there was a pond. In this pond there was a log, and on the log there was 4 frogs sitting on that log. Then he said one day one of those frogs decided it was going to jump in the water. It didn't jump. It decided it was going to. And he said how that connects to the third step is when you make that decision to turn your life and your will over to the care of God, God makes you an orange frog. And I went, oh, I get that. 3 green frogs, make a decision, you become an orange frog. And then he went on to say, he says, let's say you do that on Wednesday. You become orange frog. Then on a Friday you get in a fight with your wife, you get all pissed off. He said, you didn't take your will back, you're just a pissed off orange frog. I can see that. Because I wasn't taking it over and turning it back. Once you ask for it, I could see that happened. He gave other examples, on that. So I was pretty excited. I went over to my sponsor's place. I called him up, made my appointment. And I said, okay, I said, I was at a meeting today. I said, I'm ready to take the third step. I'm ready to become an orange frog. And he just... And he would be getting his big book, and he'd look at me and say, I'm starting to get really tired of this Indian shit about frogs and all that stuff. But anyway, me and that old man, we got on our knees, we held hands, and we said that third step prayer out of the big book. And so by the time that was done, I said, what next? And he grabbed a tablet and a ruler and a pencil. And by the time I left, I was shown how to write a 5-column resentment inventory. We went through some examples. 4-column fear inventory. And an 11-column sex inventory. So in the sex inventory, the dishonesty was a separate column. Selfish was a separate. Causing jealousy, it was separate columns so you could see the pattern. Is what that was about. And so I went ahead and I wrote that inventory, and he talked to me at great lengths about the dark crannies, no secrets. It's all got to be told. And the way he said is, the way the program works, he said every odd step has a set of promises. And so every set of promises is not free. There's a condition you must meet. Then you get the promise. Withholding nothing, you get a cookie. Spiritual cookie. Withhold something, no cookie. So you got to tell it all. That's how he said. And so I went ahead and when my inventory was done, I knew it. And I knew I wasn't a hotel. I knew all of that. And while I was writing my inventory, one of the things that surprised me that came up was my sexual abuse. And I was 9 years old by my uncle. And I was sexually abused probably almost weekly, monthly for 3 years. And that was my mother's most favorite brother. And the way they do that with a little kid, they make it so you never tell. And so when I see him coming, I'd run, jump in bed, and I would cough and make believe I was sick. And my mother would say, "You lazy, get out there and get wood for your grandpa. He's out there." But I knew what was going to happen, out there. Then one night, on our reservation, they had a beer party. The fight broke out, and somebody shot him 6 times in the chest. And he died. I remember how happy I was when I heard it the next morning. I went, all right. No, it was really... But then when I saw how sad my mother was, that was her most favorite brother, I felt guilty my whole life about feeling happy because of the way she was. And that night I was writing an inventory, I lost it. And I went over to Frank's place, my sponsor's place, and late at night knocked on the door. I was just panicked because all that stuff was coming up, and he was going to give me some crap, and he was married to a gal named Jenny. She was probably under 5 foot, just a little bitty gal. And he was giving me some crap, and she walked out and she grabbed me by the ear. "Get in your bedroom," she told him. Couldn't believe he was sick. She was just bossing him around. She sent him to his room, and she made up her room, and I stayed there all week and wrote inventory. And she was a great help, there. So when I got that done, I knew it was good. I wrote everything, stuff that I could go to jail for, stuff nobody even knew I did to them, and I had to say all of that, to them. And so anyway, I took about 7 sheets of it, and the real worst stuff I wrote on a different pieces of paper, and I stuck it in my pocket. And so I did my 5th step, and the guy I was doing it with, he says, "Is that all?" And I said, "Yeah, that wasn't too bad." And so he said, "I'm going to make some more coffee." And while he was making coffee, he started telling me about his 5th step. And he told me what he was telling the other guy and God and himself. He was a sick mother, this guy was. He was really a sicko. And I thought, okay, I got a little bit more, because if he tells on me, I'll tell on him. We'll end up in the same jail, So I told some more of it, and I finished it. And then he said, "You go home," and he said, "You review." Showed me where the review was. Then he said, "If the review is good, I'll be by the phone." Then he said, "There's a set of promises. Withholding nothing. You can look at the world at perfect peace and ease." And the first time I experienced what those promises were, just something happened. I'd read them. I'd read it, and he said, "Claim it. It's yours. You did the work." And I'd read it and claim it. And it just, I just felt really good about that. And later on, I learned another thing helped a lot in inventory. Is a guy showed me this that I was working with. And when I got done with my inventory, I'd take a look in this column. Maybe it was jealousy or shame or different character defects that come up. And what he taught me was to take, say, shame and put it in the first column. And then write in the second column what that shame does. And then you write in the next column how you're affected by that shame. And you do that until what pops out is just the fear. And I found out you can have 4 or 5 fears that will cause a character defect. And what I got out of that is the way I was doing it is character defects worked solo. And I found out character defect work in teams. You get irritation going. And if you don't correct it, it presses a little button to anger. Say, hey, anger, come on in here. We got him going. And then pretty soon anger comes in with a toothpick and says, what's happening? Well, we got him going. Well, let's get self-justification in here too. So they call the other guy, and then pretty soon I got this whole committee driving me nuts out there acting like a stupid, whatever. But then I began to see they worked in teams. So it was a big shift for me, finding out they weren't solo workers. They worked they were buddies. And so I went ahead and I did my 5th step. And then I did step 6 and 7. And I saw where I was to get that information out of my inventory. And I got the information for my steps 8 and 9 for my amends. And so I had the information for the next steps. And I struggled some with step 6 and 7. It seemed like every time I tried to get God to remove one, everything got worse. So I said, you're not doing it right. So I go back and find a different approach and go to meetings and read the book. And every time I try to do it, it would get worse. And so, again, I was in a meeting. I heard this guy talking about step 6 and 7. And he said, when you come to section 6 and 7, he said, it's like this. He said, you got a stove. You turn the stove to 350 because you're going to bake a cake. And you get a pan, you put the flour and the sugar and all those things for a cake in that pan, and you look and it goes 350. You say, okay, I'm going to put this cake in the pan because the stove is going to bake the cake. And he says, so you open up the door and you stick that cake in there, you close the door. And he said, what you're doing is, he said, you put yourself in God's hands for maybe 10 minutes and then you open up the door. You done yet? Did you do it? You didn't do it? No. We'll do it some more. He said, you got to let God bake you. Quit peeking. Quit interfering with it. And so I started to catch myself doing that, and I knew, don't open up the door. Just let him bake you. And somehow that story worked a lot. And so I got through 8 and 9. Then I got into 10 and 11. And I probably did about a year. I thought taking steps 10 and 11 was I was to open my book up and I would read them. Look at the 24 hours ahead. I'd read it. And then consider your plans. I just read it, thinking I didn't know I had to do it. So I got some more help from Johnny Lookencloud, and he is asking, because I was asking him to teach me how to pray. Because things weren't leveling out, as yo-yoing. And so then he said, when it says you think about the 24 hours ahead, that's what you're supposed to do. And you get yourself going to Saturday, you go, whoops, come back to today, you got to practice just the 24 hours. Then the way I was doing the consider your plans for the day, that was my to-do list. I'm going to go here, I'm going to do this, and he said, that's not what that is either. He said, what that means is you're planning the intent of your being. Today I intend to be patient and kind and honest and loving. You planned your being, your intent was there. When I started doing that, things started to change. It was really pretty cool. Then when I asked him to help me to pray, he had me, he said, you do this 11th step, but I had to get up in the morning before sunrise. And so I would watch the horizon, and when I first could see the sun, he said, then you pray until the sun is a full circle, like this. He said, there's a door there. The birds start singing, the dew starts melting. There's all kinds of energy is going on there. And he said, that's when you consider your plans, ask God to direct your thinking. You do it right while the sun is becoming full, because he said, when the sun is up higher, birds ain't singing no more. Dew's all gone. So if you want to pray, he said, this is how the old people did a long time ago. They started their day at sunrise, watching that. When I started that, things changed, again. So my family started coming back, and when I was about 3.5 years sober, well, the other thing Johnny Looking Cloud helped me with is he said, I'm going to help nurture you. He said, bringing the culture in. And so when I was about 3.5 years sober, I started to get really uneasy. And I go to meetings, and I was getting really judgmental in the meetings. Just sitting there while you're watching Gary, Westside Gary, AA's like Indians, they give you names, Westside Gary, so Westside Gary. He was telling the same story for 20 years. Every day he'd tell a story about the butcher shop. And the butcher shop had been burned down, it was gone. Everything was gone, he'd tell the same story. And he irritated the crap out of me. And then he was sponsoring people. That irritated me. And so I was sitting there and I just judged my home group, just my meeting. I go to other meetings and it was the same old crap. So then I opened up my big book and I had it so marked up and written and looked up dictionary words, and I couldn't read it and get anything out of it anymore. I just been through it 1,000 times. I called my sponsor. He got just stupid as dirt. So he was saying weird stuff to me about what I was supposed to do. And my 11th step, I felt like I was doing a rosary. I'd open up my book to that page, open up the 24 hours in the morning, ask God direct your thinking, do what you say, done. And that wasn't working, but that's how it felt. I wanted to say I did it, so I was like doing the beads. And there was a moment I said, you know something? You're setting yourself up to drink. That's what's going on here. And so I went up to see Johnny Looking Cloud. And he was a Lakota guy. He was sober over 40 years. And he took a liking to me. And so I went up there, and when I would go there, he'd whittle on a stick, because I was just... He'd just whittle till I was done. And when I got done, he'd say... he was kind of a weird guy. Like, I would never ask him, what do you think about this? Because he wouldn't answer you right away. He would go think about it. Sometimes half a day. And you couldn't ask him another question. You say, shh, I'm thinking about it. And that's the way he was. So he said, how long are you sober exactly? I told him. And he took a stick and he drew a circle in the dirt. And he marked 4 directions in that circle: east, south, west, north. It'd be like if you put a circle on a map. East would be New York, that area. South would be the southern states, California, Canada. And he said, what you got to know now is, he said, the steps, the program recovery, the human being. He said, the tree is designed to have 4 seasons in 1 year: spring, summer, fall, winter. That's how the tree works it. The salmon, it swims out for 4 years, and it swims back to the mouth of the river, and it goes up there, lays its eggs. Everything's got a season and a cycle, everything. And he says, so does recovery. So do you as a child of God. He said, because we live on our Mother Earth, and everything on there has a circle, a season, and a cycle. And he said, now you need to know about that. And he said, when you come in a program, like an oak tree, what makes the sap flow is that's a life force for the tree. It starts to flow in the tree, but the tree don't know it yet. So when you come in and you can fully concede to your innermost self, a spirit comes inside you and says, okay, you met the requirement. I'm going to help you grow. And sometimes we call it grace. There's all kind of names that we call it. Then the oak tree, all of a sudden one day, it starts to bud on different branches. These little bitty green buds are all over. And you ever noticed, like, when you first come in, he said, your first year is like a spring. Your second year is like a summer. Your third year is like a fall. The fourth year is winter. And he said, usually when you come in, other people will notice you budding before you do. They'll say, you're starting to glow. Oh, you got a new hairdo. Nah, same old hairdo I had since the 60s. Back off, you know. Oh, you got new clothes. I just recycle these old rags. Then one day, you get up in the morning, you're getting ready, you look in the mirror, and something clicks. You go, wait a minute. There is something going on. So you close the curtains because you don't know nobody to see. You've got to examine yourself now. And you look in the mirror and you're going, like checking everything out. And you step back, you say, I don't know what it is, but there's something going on. I'm budding. I'm growing. So you go to meetings, you do the work, you're in the steps, you're doing the work. Then all of a sudden, those buds start to unfold all over you. Getting responsible, paying your bills, making your commitments, doing service work. And all of a sudden you take a shape of recovery. And you start to say it's working. Then that's pretty cool. And then the season comes along, like the oak tree. And all of a sudden the oak tree is green and it's getting yellow and harvest and fruits and nuts. And the oak tree is saying, oh, right, I've arrived. They're taking my picture. Everybody thinks I'm just beautiful. And I want you to stay like this. Don't nobody change nothing. And it's not that you don't have flat tires when you're in your third year, but right in front of the gas station. Yes. So you got kind of lucky. Then you're standing out there and everything is going good, like the oak tree. Then it comes into the winter season. And then one day the temperature changes a little bit, gust of wind comes along, and a few of the leaves start to fall off. And at first it's not a big deal. A week later, temperature changes a little bit more, gust of wind comes along, more leaves fall off. So when it happens, the alcoholic says, I better start going to more meetings. Something's going away. And so pretty soon you go to more meetings, and the temperature changes a little bit, gust of wind comes along, more leaves go away. And pretty soon about 3/4 of the leaves are gone. And you're going to meetings now, or reading your big book upside down and doing 11 steps, and it still ain't working. So you get really spiritual, but the only thing you can do is you sit there and think about what's going on, but the only spiritual word you can think of is shit. Because it's all turned to crap. So he told me, he said, I thought my analysis was I thought God was mad because I said shit and God in the same sentence. I thought I was doing something wrong. I couldn't find out in that book. I wanted to stay sober so bad. And I thought I was doing something wrong. And he said, no. He said, you're not doing nothing wrong. You're just in winter. Doesn't a tree have to lose its leaves so that the next spring it becomes a new tree, bigger shape, more of it? He said, that's all that's going on. And so I left her and I was driving back to Colorado Springs. And I just started to cry. I got it. I wasn't doing nothing wrong. I was just in a winter cycle. And so he showed me a different way on how to work steps during the fourth year. He said, there's another way that you can do this work. And then he said it'll happen again 7 to 8. Cycle. 11 to 12. It'll happen again. 15 to 16. It'll happen again. Then the way he explained it to me, he said, I'm going to help you bring the culture into these steps of AA. So in the first circle, you have 4, 4, 4, 4. That's 16 years of sobriety. Now, the transition is the winter, 3 to 4. A lot of people drink 3 to 4, 7 to 8, 11 to 12. So he said, where do you go when you do 15 to 16? And I said, you just go back to spring. He said, no, you travel. It's not the same thing. And you go down to another new circle of 16 years. 4, 4, 4, 4, a new circle. And he said, that movement is different than just moving inside of the winter. He said, during that 15 to 16, there's 3 questions that you can't answer. One is, why am I? One is, who am I? One is, where am I going? And he said, 15 to 16, it works like this. Let's just say that you are on the moon working, and you can only work there 16 years. Then you got to get in a rocket, you got to come home. When you come home, and I use this as an example because I work for NASA, from Apollo 6 to Apollo 13. So when you come home, that rocket has to hit a 100 square mile window. It's got to go through a window. And if it does that, it still catches on fire, but all the forces work to let it settle down on the earth again. If it misses the window, it'll circle the sun and you die. If you go too steep, you burn up. You got to hit the window. So he said at 15 to 16, that's the way it is. There's a window you have to hit. He says what that window is called is trusting God. That's the window. You cannot have no other gods before that God. So what I was doing, I get in a bag of crap, run to a meeting. Meeting saved my ass. Not really. God saves my ass. Well, I could read my book. Book said, not really. So I had all these pocket gods I was running to other places. I wasn't going to where I was supposed to go anymore. So what he taught me to do was he'd say, build an altar. And what that meant was I'd just take a red cloth and then I had this little pile of rocks. So I had to turn my children over to God. And I turned my meetings over to God. And I turned my big book over to God. And I turned my relationship over to God. I had to turn all these things that I was putting before until the only thing left was trusting God. Let everything else go. And it's not easy at 16 years of sobriety. Because many people, they suffer depression, mental ill. They just think they're all screwed up, God left. There's all kind of reasons that you think is going on. And it's nothing to do with nothing. It's to do with a transition. A shift in the orbit, a shift in the circle. Now, the way that these seasons work, the first 4 years is survival, choice, influence, and mastery. So that's how the circle goes. And so I remember my 15 to 16, I was doing work, sponsoring people, doing all kinds of stuff. I was just as lost, but I knew about the cycle system. Even knowing it does. I guess it's like you can know all you want about sailing in a hurricane. You can read all you want about it when that mother comes. It's a whole different deal, But that's the way it was. So I've gone through those types of cycles. I left that arena on August 10th, 1978. And I know that alcohol is standing in there. I'm not going back to the arena. I keep coming back to you guys. I'm not going to Barnes & Noble. I'm not doing those things. And I learned that for a long time I thought this was a white man's program, but then I found out through Johnny Cloud it wasn't. So he showed me how to put the steps in a circle. Put 3 steps in the east, steps 1, 2, 3. That's like finding a new sun. a new day, new beginning, your relationship with the Creator. Then you go to steps 4, 5, and 6. That's where you find your relationship with yourself. You know your strength, you know your weaknesses. 7, 8, 9 in the west is the amends. Letting sunset, darkness, let it go. Make your amends, set it right. That's the direction where you set yourself up. We say, Matak Wiyasi, to all my relatives. So now you're established back to your clan or to your relatives. 10, 11, 12 is in the north. And then that's when you're back in harmony with the earth and with the teachings and those things, the maintenance. And so I'll just kind of close with this. When I was 4 years sober, I asked the Creator if I would be able to carry this A's message to my people, and I was allowed to do so. And I made a commitment: I won't retire. That's what I will do. I will carry this message because it works. I was 4 years sober. Honest to God, I didn't drink, I didn't sip, I didn't smell, I didn't lie. I was really, really 4 years sober. I couldn't believe it. You know that it really works. And so, when you started to put steps in a circle, the Native people started looking at it differently. They started to add their own culture to it. They were looking at things differently. And I'll say this is that feeling that I had in that very first meeting, it took a while, but I found out what it was. And that's the feeling you get when you come home. That's the feeling you get when you belong. Like, I belong to the Turtle Clan. I belong there. I can't get kicked out. That's where I belong. And when I come there, it was like, I didn't know that. It was like I come home. It was to my own people. I belong there. I didn't know all that stuff. It's all white guys, you know. How could that be like that? I remember one time I went home to my reservation, and my dad took me down to the airport in Green Bay, and he said, "Don't ever come back here again. We don't want you here no more." And I had to leave and not come back. And I came to you guys, and what you fools told me was, "Keep coming back." Are you nuts? And so I guess it's like this. If I know it won't happen, but if I ever had to take a choice between my tribe and you, I would choose you guys. Because I have a disease, and you know how to help me with it. And so I want to thank you for giving me back my family, my sobriety. And I'll close with this prayer I learned here. God, thank you for what you've given me. God, thank you for what you've taken from me. And God, thank you for what you left me. And what you left me was you guys. That I could come all this way and just have that feeling all weekend long. Thank you very much.